Hello, Monroe School District. Today we're going to talk about creating those mastery paths. Now, this is going to be part one. I love mastery paths because it gives us options for students who might be at a different level than other students in the class. Maybe they're right in the middle. Maybe you have students who are excelling and they need some different type of instruction than other students in the class. And so with mastery paths, it really gives us a chance to differentiate instruction. And that is what makes it my very favorite tool. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, what I'm going to do is walk you through what that looks like. And then we're going to talk about how to start creating a mastery paths. And this is going to require some time away from Canvas. And then when we come back tomorrow, we're going to talk about now how do you put that information into Canvas and create those pathways. So that's our agenda for today and tomorrow. All right, the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and open up our class. And this is just going to be for you to take a little tour. So let's just go on a tour. I'm going to head over to my modules because I want to show you the back end and I want to show you what this looks like. Now, when I'm in my modules, I'm going to scroll all the way down because I created a mastery paths. Now, I get questions from people. How do I make this feel a little less overwhelming? And I agree with you because right now I'm like, okay, I have to scroll way down to find this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse with that little arrow. I'm going to collapse any of these modules that I'm finished with or that I don't need anymore. And that's going to make it a little easier. So now when I look down, here's the module that I'm going to be using right here. Another way I can do this, if I want to have this be at the top, I'm just going to pick it up, pick this module up on its little dots, and I'm just going to drag it all the way to the top. And I can also do that same dragging feature. If I click over here on those three dots, then I'm able to move my module that way too. So that way now the one I'm working on, it's right here on top. So I don't have to be scrambling through looking at lots of things. Okay, so when you are creating a mastery path, you are going to want to put it into a separate module. Do you have to? No, but it does make it a lot easier. Now, a mastery path, if you can imagine, you have your students, you want to know where your students are with a particular concept. It might be a pre-test, it might be a post-test. You want to know where they are skill-wise so that you know how to push forward, how to move content, how to then address the needs that are still out there in terms of that instructional content. So you're going to create a mastery path. The first thing you generally do when you want to find out where students are is create an assessment. And so a mastery path starts off with some type of an assessment. This can be in the form of an assignment. It can be in the form of some kind of a survey. Generally speaking, it's probably going to be a quiz. So as you can tell, notice the icon. This is our quiz icon. So I created a sample mastery path. And let me just, again, I'm just going to show you generally what this looks like. So I created this quiz. And when I created the quiz, I changed it to be a mastery pathway quiz. What that means is when the students take the quiz, based on how their grades come out, they are going to get specific assignments. And I have also created those assignments so they fall within the module here. So on this particular assessment, if a student receives between 7.7 points and 11 points, they are going to be assigned these two assignments. If they got anywhere between 4.4 points and 7.7 points, they are going to get these assignments. And if they got anywhere between 0 points and 4.4, they are going to be assigned these assignments. And they won't see anything else. That's the whole beauty of it, is that they will only be assigned content that falls within the level that they are. So that's pretty awesome. Let's go in and let's take a peek. I want to show you kind of the back way of this. So once the quiz has been created, within the quiz, so we talked about setting up quizzes. Let's just go back here really quick. Here's the details. So that's going to be like the instructions to the students. And we talked about now selecting your questions that the students are going to take a quiz over. And then the next piece, if you want to turn this into a mastery pathway, is you are going to set up what those pathways look like. So you have up to 3 pathways, and that's it. You have 3 pathways. So you have 3 choices for where you want this to land. I can come in here and I can change these points to whatever I want. So if I want this to be just 7 points, or if I want it to be 8 points and get rid of any of those decimals, I can set it up as such. And so this is my way of thinking, is that we have students who score between 0 and 4. They probably need some sort of reteaching. They probably need some sort of intervention, depending on when you're giving this. If it's a pretest, maybe it's, okay, these are students who really, they need a little bit of extra instruction. So I'm going to really beef up the content of instruction-wise that I'm going to give these students. Maybe your middle level, these students they're close to mastering the concept, but they aren't quite there yet. So they need a little bit more practice, maybe a little bit more instruction. And finally, you have your students who they've got it. You just know they've got it, and they're going to be bored if you give them any of the content that you're giving to the students who fall between a 0 and 8 points on this particular test. So you're going to think about, what are some enrichment activities that I can give to these students so they're still engaged in the instruction, but it's engagement at their level. So that's essentially the point of a mastery pathway, is to be able to differentiate instruction based on how students do according to some type of an assessment that you give them. So I'm going to jump over to a slideshow that I created for you here. And let's talk about a couple of things. So the first thing that let's go through is, what are some of the uses for Mastery Pathway? This is a way that you can give extra support based on outcomes from your quiz. This is a chance for students who need to relearn some material to have time to relearn that material before they move on to something else. So if there's prerequisites, skills they need to know, you're going to determine those, and you're going to give them a chance to relearn those skills before they have to move on to the next one. This is an opportunity for enrichment for advanced learners, or learners on this particular skill or concept have got it and they're ready for something different. You can also do some kind of a choose your own adventure with this, in terms of, if you give students a survey and you give them a choice of maybe it's not even assessing skills, it's just, hey, would you rather do this or this? And would you rather do this or this? And then their own adventure becomes, a project-based lesson, or maybe they're doing a research paper. Maybe they're doing some kind of a video interview based on what their likes and dislikes are. So it's kind of another way, just a different way of thinking. It can also be used for interventions. There's a lot of things that you can do with Mastery Pathways. So you can think big, and I would encourage you to really think big. What are things you can do with this? How can you really provide rich content for students at different levels within your one class? But here's a word of caution: start small first, because you need to get down the basics of how to create these mastery pathways. Once you have the basics, then the world is yours. You're going to be able to come up with some really great ideas. And later on, we're going to get to a couple of idea videos. And so we'll share some ideas for what are some really big thinking things that you can do with Mastery Pathways, because it's pretty amazing. All right. So when you were thinking about creating your Mastery Pathways, there's 4 areas of content that you can use within these. You can use quizzes, but they need to be graded quizzes in order for them to work within the pathway scheme. You can use assignments. You can use discussions. Again, you need to have graded discussions though. And you can also add pages. And so any of these 4 types of content from Canvas are content that you can use in your Mastery Pathways when you start creating them. All right, let's talk just a little bit. Let's talk just a little bit about what this is going to look like. So I mentioned earlier that you can only have 3 pathways. And a strong suggestion I have is that you map this out ahead of time. What do you want this to look like? Because if you just start building content in Canvas, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to create my quiz, I'm going to randomly start pulling this in and that in, you're going to get lost, and it's not going to be very successful. So this really does take a little bit of planning in order to do this. And I would plan outside of your Canvas environment first. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So when you plan, you're going to be thinking about, how do you want to start? How do you want to assess a student's skill? Or how do you want to gather information about a particular topic that you want to divide your kids into groups for, something like that? The second thing is then you're going to create the criteria for each pathway. How many points do students need in order to fall into this category or this category or this category? And that could be strategically based. It might be that you're going to divide it up by, okay, if they get an A, they're going to be in the top level. If they get a B, they're going to be in the middle. If they get a C or below, then they need some extra relearning time or some intervention. And so just thinking through how you want that to look. And then finally, you're going to create content for each path. So I have set this out for you, a sample one of what I would do as I'm creating content for a mastery path. And I am a sticky note geek. I would recommend having something that you can use. I like sticky notes because you can rearrange them, you can move them around, you can color code, etc. You can do this on a piece of paper, you can do this on your computer, however you want. But I strongly suggest that you think through what this is going to look like. So in this particular one, let's say I'm going to give a pre-test. So I'm about to start into a new lesson. I want to know where students are with content. And this is worth 20 points. So I've determined that if a student can get 18 to 20 points, I would feel very comfortable saying that they have mastered that content and that they really don't need to go through all the learning of that because they already have it. They're going to be board stiff. So those are the point designations I give to that one. The middle level, where I feel like, they're close to mastery. They need some extra practice. They might need some extra instruction, but they are nearing that mastery level. And then finally, if they are 14 or below, they're going to need the instruction first, and then they're going to need some time to practice, and then before they get to the post-test. So this is how I've divided up my content for a mastery pathway. And then I'm going to think through what kind of assignments do I want to associate with each of those paths that I have created. So maybe in an enrichment, I might give them the option of some kind of a project or a research paper. If they get to near mastery, maybe they need to have a little bit of instruction, then they need some practice and maybe an extension activity. If they're below, I'm going to definitely want to give them a couple of video tutorials. I'm going to give them some time for a practice. And then maybe we'll give them another pre-test just to see where they are before we leave that content area. So anyway, it's really up to you, your imagination in terms of how you want to make this work. This works great for math. In a language class, maybe your pre-test is an essay assignment. So they have to write an essay, and maybe what you're assessing is how well they use details within their paragraph. And so you're only assessing on the details of that. So you're going to correct that test yourself at the end, but you have set this up to say, they use details perfectly. I'm going to give them something else here. They need a little bit more practice with how to use details, or I really need to start at the basics here with some instruction videos on how to use details within a paragraph. And so this really gives you that option. So when you go to grade it, you can hand grade it. You can hand put students into each of these. You can set this up to be a self-graded quiz, and it will automatically, as soon as the student takes the test, it will automatically put them into the category that they fall based on points. So you have quite a few options here. Once you're in the mastery pathway itself, here, I'm going to head back out there. I'm going to show you another thing about this. So once you're in the pathway itself, you have some different choices for how you want to add instruction. So we're down at the bottom. Let's say, first of all, we want to participate in a discussion, make sure we have some good background information on this topic before we jump in. So we're going to have a discussion. And also, I want them to do lesson 1. But I don't want them to do lesson 1 until they've completed the discussion. So tomorrow, I'll show you how you can set this up so that they have to complete the discussion first before they can move into the individual homework assignment. And then they have to do this before they can move here. And they have to do this before they can move here. So you have some options for that. Now, you also have some options within Mastery Pathways to where students can have choice. So do you want them to have a choice to do this assignment or this one? And so you can change this. If you want them to do both of them, it's as simple as that. Now they have to do this one and this one and this one. And so it's really simple to set up. If you want to add one more assignment to the enrichment part, you just click here, you go down, you find whatever, whichever, let's see, I think we're in assignments. You want to find, I want to give them an exit ticket as well. I'm going to add that item in there. And now they have to do this one and this one, or they can do this. Or I want them to have a choice. You can do this one or this one or this one. So Mastery Paths gives you lots and lots of choices for things you can do within the path for students. So as you're starting to create a plan, be thinking about what are some different things that I want them to do along the way. And these can become quite lengthy if you want them to be quite lengthy for the different choices. So I know this is a little shorter video today because I want you to spend some time doing the homework assignment. What I would like for you to do is to think about some kind of an assessment of student learning and think about, make this be really super meaningful. So what is something that you have coming up that you want to test students' knowledge on? In particular, when students are at home, you don't know where they are skill-wise, so you're going to want to figure out, how can I create some kind of an assessment so I know where they are so that I can assign individual work to meet that individual student's needs? Now, are 3 pathways going to meet everybody's exact needs? It's not, but it's definitely a really good starting place. So I'd like you to think about what might that assessment look like. And if you want to, I believe we already created an assessment and quizzes in the last video. If you haven't done that yet, maybe create an assessment with the lens of this mastery pathway, and then start thinking about how would you break that assessment down by points, and what does that look like in terms of your thinking, so that you know maybe this is exceeds mastery, they're near mastery, below mastery, however you want to set this up. And then start thinking about what kind of projects do I need to have in each of these areas for students. So if they are below mastery of that particular concept, what do I need to do to get them up to mastery? And you're probably going to want to do something different that they haven't had before. So there's some great videos out there. Maybe there's some video tutorials, a couple video tutorials for them to do first, and then they do some practice. You might want to have those same videos associated with your middle level. Watch the video first, but we're going to give you, we're going to push you through the practice problems a lot faster than we would down here. So your assignment for today is, if you would please think about that assessment. How would you break it down by points? And then what are your 3 pathways? And what assignments would you give within those 3 pathways? So on your Google document, you can, if you want to do this by hand like I did with sticky notes, or if you want to just write this out on a piece of paper, or if you're doing something online, take a snapshot of it, put it in your Google document. This is, we're at lesson number 15 now, so if you would please put lesson 15 and then add a picture of whatever you have come up with, add a picture in there. If you go so far as, I'm going to come back out here, if you want to start creating the module, you would create, remember it's, I'm going to say best practice is really to create this module. You could within something that you're already doing, I hope I'm not going to confuse you here. You could, if you're doing a unit and you want to create 2 mastery pathways within a unit, I would come down here and I would add up here a text header. And this header is going to be Unit 1 Mastery Path. And then you can add that item. Come down to the bottom because it always sticks it at the bottom, and we're just going to move it up. So if you want to have this be the pre-test, if you want it to be the post-test, and then within here, I would create your mastery path lessons and house that underneath your text header. it's just, if you have everything together somehow for this mastery path, it's going to make it a lot easier, because tomorrow when I talk about the assignments, we do have to go in and tweak some things on the assignments to make them so they fit in the mastery path. So that's my strong recommendation, that you create either a module and create everything that goes in your mastery path in that module, or you come down into a unit and then create a separate text header and keep everything under there before you move into the other pieces of the lesson. Okay, so your assignment, we were talking about doing the hand piece and getting that all down. If you want to move on past that and you want to create placeholders for all of these, you can create placeholders. So I've gone further. There's content behind all of this. You don't have to. You can just create your quiz, and then you can say, okay, I was going to put a project or a research paper in here, so I need to create an assignment for a project. I need to create an assignment for the research paper. And then for Near Mastery, they were going to do a video tutorial. I need to create an assignment for that. And they were going to do practice and extension. And so you can start putting placeholders in here for your mastery pathway. If you would rather do this and then take a screenshot of this and put this under lesson 15, that will also, you can also do that, and that will be for your assignment. So either way on that one. So again, today we're starting the work with the mastery paths. I don't want to go too fast with this, because I think that the pre-thinking is super important. If you haven't taken the time to do the back-end thinking, when we start inputting the content into Canvas, then it's going to be confusing. So you really want to have good thoughts in terms of where you want to go with this. So spend some time with this. Start thinking about how you could use this and how this could be really powerful instruction for your students, because there's amazing things you can do with this to really be powerful. So that is today's lesson, part 1 of Mastery Pathways, and also your assignment for today. So tomorrow when we come back, we will take a look at Mastery Paths part 2, and that's where we'll set the pathway up in Canvas so that you can see how this structure works for students. And then we'll take a look at the student view so that you can see what those paths look like depending on the scores they do on their assessment. All right, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening.